Good morning, Commissioners. This is the public hearing of March 24th, 2015. Chair Srinivasan. Here. Commissioner Shamir Barron. Commissioner Bland. Here. Commissioner Chapin. Commissioner Chen. Commissioner Devonshire. Here. Commissioner Goldblum. Commissioner Gustafson.
Here.
Commissioner Moore.
Here.
Commissioner Voss.
Here.
Commissioner Washington.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have an item proposed for the Commission's calendar. It's the Bank of Manhattan Company, Long Island City Branch Building, 2927 Queens Plaza North, aka 29-27 41st Avenue, 29-39 Northern Boulevard, Queens, LP 2570. The landmark site is Queens Block 403, Lot 21 in part, and it's Community District 1. For nearly a century, the former Bank of Manhattan Company building has been one of Long Island's most recognizable structures. 11 stories tall with 3 design facades, the most visually prominent feature is the slender clock tower incorporating large glass faces with Roman numerals and a crenellated crown. The former bank branch is located on the north side of Queens Plaza between Northern Boulevard and 41st Avenue. The research department recommends calendaring a lot in part, that is the footprint of the original tower and extension. The current tax lot has been modified throughout its history and expanded to include later accretions and a parking lot. And this shows the boundaries of the original tax lot and, the site plan of the building in 1928, which is what we're recommending to be calendared as a lot in part. Following the opening of the Queensboro Bridge in 1909, this section of Long Island City developed into an important commercial center, attracting a large concentration of factories and banks. When the Bank of Manhattan Company was dedicated in May 1927, it was an instant landmark, easily seen by thousands of people in passing cars and on the various elevated transit routes that converge at Queens Plaza. Founded in 1799, the Manhattan Company acquired the site through a merger with the Bank of Long Island in 1920. With nearly 40 branches in Queens by the end of the decade, this office tower served as a prominent reminder of the bank's far-reaching commitment to the citizens of the borough. Morrell Smith was the building's architect. During his 50-year career, this Queens-born designer was responsible for numerous buildings in the metropolitan area, including a significant group of structures for the Manhattan Company. At the time of its completion, this tan brick and limestone tower was reportedly 85% occupied, with many floors leased to tenants who had not been previously active in the area of Queens. Smith's design received first prize from the Queens Chamber of Commerce for the borough's best business building of 1927. Despite alterations to the base in the 1960s, the neo-Gothic style elevations are mostly well preserved, including the small rooftop reliefs that incorporate images of the god Oceanus, a symbol of the bank, as well as the bank's initials.
All right, I think this building is just very iconic, and it's sort of an interesting intersection of Long Island City, and it's a neighborhood that's obviously undergoing a lot of change, and I think there's a real opportunity for this neighborhood to have a historic anchor. So I would recommend that we calendar this. Are we all in favor? So we will calendar. Take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So this will be calendared for public hearing.
Item number 2 is proposed for designation. It's the proposed Crown Heights North Historic District 3, LP 2489, and Michael Karatzis will be presenting. I just wanted to briefly summarize, though, for you that this was calendared on June 28th, 2011, and heard on January 17th, 2012. 12 people spoke in favor of designation, including representatives of Councilmember Albert Vann, Councilmember James, Brooklyn Borough President Marty Markowitz, Community Board 8, the Crown Heights North Association, Historic Districts Council, and New York Landmarks Conservancy. One person spoke neither in favor nor in opposition to designation, and we've received a letter of support from Councilmember Cornegi. Okay, Mike?
We
proposed Crown Heights North 3 Historic District comprises more than 600 buildings, including single and two-family row houses, flats buildings, and apartment houses, primarily built from the 1870s to the 1930s. These buildings represent the wealth of architectural styles that flourished in Brooklyn during this period, including the Neo-Gothic, Queen Anne, Romanesque Revival, Renaissance Revival, Colonial Revival, Arts and Crafts, and Art Deco. The proposed district also includes the inviting residential enclaves of Revere and Hampton and Virginia Places, consisting of picturesque, well-preserved row houses grouped along short mid-block streets, as well as the city's earliest, most extensive, and most stylistically diverse collection of Kinko houses, remarkable two-family duplex houses that enjoyed a brief period of popularity in Brooklyn from 1905 to about 1915. These two-family duplexes were primarily built along Sterling, Hampton, Prospect Places, and also along Brooklyn Avenue. On its west, the proposed historic district adjoins the Crown Heights North and Crown Heights North 2 historic districts, designated in 2007 and 2011, which together contain more than 1,000 buildings of similar age, style, and type. Once occupied by the Langley people, most of the land within the proposed district was formerly farmland owned by Robert Lefferts Jr., Samuel Garrettson, and Jeremiah Ransom, southeast of the old village of Hornets. These farms were auctioned off in the 1830s and 1850s. Horse car lines and other transportation links were extended to the area, and around 1870, the district's earliest surviving row houses were constructed in an unusual combination of the Italianate and neo-Brick styles. Development accelerated slightly following the 1883 opening of the Brooklyn Bridge, and in 1886, plans were filed for these row houses, the district's earliest Queen Anne-style row houses. The district blossomed following the 1888 opening of the Kings County Elevated Railway along Fulton Street to the foot of the Brooklyn Bridge. Hundreds of handsome row houses would be constructed in the district into the early 1900s as the neighborhood became known as the fashionable, select, and beautiful St. Mark's District. Most of these houses were constructed in the classically inspired Renaissance Revival style, which was at the height of its popularity in Brooklyn between 1890 and 1910. These houses, with their full height, rounded, and angled bays, are representative of early Renaissance-inspired row houses within the historic district. Others include this striking group, executed in light gray brick. Among the proposed district's most appealing features are its three places, short mid-block streets flanked by picturesque row houses, a type of development that was becoming increasingly popular, although still somewhat rare at the turn of the 20th century. Revere Place was the district's earliest, designed in a mixture of the Romanesque Revival and Renaissance Revival styles. In 1902, Hampton and Virginia Place development was completed, consisting of 50 Colonial Revival-style houses of seven different types, built perpendicular to Park and Sterling Places. As development intensified in Crown Heights North, flats buildings began to be constructed, mostly in the early 20th century. Several were built in the Renaissance Revival style, and among the district's most elegant Colonial Revival style structures are these red brick and limestone flats buildings. As an alternative to flats and single-family houses, many developers constructed two-story, two-family row houses, which enabled purchasers to live on the first floor while renting out the floor above. Generally similar in appearance to two-story single-family houses and built in the same styles, they include this expressive trio, which feature oversized classical reliefs and imposing cornices with large consoles and freely hanging garlands. The proposed district's most unusual two-family houses are this pair, which feature unusually creative Queen Anne-style facades. Although two-family row houses were popular, many residents objected to their shared entrances, which impinged on each family's privacy, and their many interior rooms, including bedrooms, which lacked access to sunlight and fresh air. In 1905, the Kings and Westchester Land Company, to the designs of Mann and McNeil, began constructing an ingenious alternative, the two-family duplex house, marketed after 1909 as Kinko houses. Each house had two entrances, one for a lower apartment on the first two stories and one for an upper apartment on the third and fourth floors, and all bedrooms and other living spaces had at least one window. First constructed here, they were followed by 3 other groups built by Kings in Westchester and by 5 rows constructed by other developers in a variety of styles, including this one. This exceptional concentration of 2-family duplex houses, a building type constructed for only about a decade, is one of the standout features of the proposed district. By 1915, most of the district's architectural development was finished, but a handful of apartment houses were later constructed. These included the colonial revival-style Brower Court and these Art Deco apartments. By the early 1920s, many Jewish families were settling in the neighborhood, and in 1925, the monumental Shari Zedek Synagogue opened to house the city's largest conservative congregation. Although few new buildings were built after this period, significant changes continued to occur in the district, most importantly, its evolution into a majority African and Caribbean American neighborhood. In 1941 and 1942, novelist Richard Wright and his wife Ellen lived at 11 Revere Place. And in 1945, Dr. Melvin W. Mason, an immigrant from Montserrat and graduate of Lincoln and Howard Universities, purchased the former Phipps House, the district's only surviving freestanding house. Although suburbanization and the practice of redlining, which discouraged lending in neighborhoods with large African American and immigrant populations, contributed to disinvestment in the neighborhood, the Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration Corporation, which began operations in 1967, sponsored the makeover of St. Mark's Avenue and Prospect Place into 2 superblocks. Designed by I.M. Pei and M. Paul Friedberg and completed in 1969, the renovations to these 2 streets remain largely intact. The district's most significant historical figure was Shirley Chisholm, the country's first Black congresswoman, who lived in 4 locations in the proposed district, including 1094 Prospect Place from 1945 to 1962, and 1066 Prospect in 1962 and 1963. She and her husband Conrad were living at 1165 Sterling Place in 1968 when she was elected to Congress, and owned the house at 1028 St. John's Place when she undertook her dramatic 1972 run for the U.S. presidency. Although Chisholm's presidential bid failed, her campaign was inspirational to many Americans, especially young African Americans and women, who later went on to pursue elective office or otherwise work for social and political change. Although the proposed Crown Heights North 3 Historic District has experienced many changes over its history, it remains a remarkably well-preserved testament to the quality of Brooklyn's residential architecture at the turn of the 20th century, and is a worthy complement to the earlier designated Crown Heights North and Crown Heights North 2 historic districts.
Thank you, Michael. Do any of the commissioners have questions for our research staff? Any questions?
Yeah, I have one quick question. I walked the entire district, and I can't seem to remember what it is, the little island is in the middle that we're not designating.
That's Brower Park. It's
Okay.
a park, and
All right.
it's not, it has the Children's Museum in it, which is a.
Oh, I got it in my head now. Yep.
We did receive some testimony this morning, so I'd just like to put that on the record. Okay, yeah. We received a letter from Councilmember Cornegie in support. We received a letter from Community Board 8 also in support. And we received a letter from Crown Heights North Association thanking the agency and also very much in support of this designation. I can say for myself that I'm very excited about this, and this was heard in 2012, and our research staff and all of us here are just happy to bring it to fruition. I think Michael's presentation was excellent in explaining the sort of the rich texture of this district, and it has truly an amazing collection of buildings and styles that are very, very cohesive. It has certain areas that are very distinct, including, as Michael pointed out, the short block enclaves. And it also has a really rich social and political history. So I would strongly recommend that the Commission support this designation. Does anybody else like to add to that? Chris? Yes.
I agree. It's impressive for more than a century and some newer buildings in the 1920s. Beautiful.
And I'd also like to thank our research staff for putting all this information together, and as well as the community who's worked very hard for this. So with that, I move that the Landmarks Preservation Commission designate the Crown Heights 3 Historic District, Borough of Brooklyn, as a New York City Historic District because it contains buildings and other improvements which have a special character and a special historical and aesthetic interest and value, and which represent one or more eras in the history of New York City, and which cause this area, by reason of these factors, to constitute a distinct section of the city. Further, this historic district is part of a development, heritage, and culture of the city, state, and nation, as set forth in Designation Report LP 2489, dated March 24, 2015. I further move that the district be designated with the boundaries as set forth in the Commission's designation report and shown on the attached map.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This historic district has been approved.